Hey everybody, this is Mark, and every week I have the honor and pleasure of meeting with a whole bunch of smart high schoolers, and I teach them apologetics. Apologetics is the defense of the Christian faith, and we've had some great classes. Is it reasonable to believe in God? Is there good evidence for that the Bible is a supernatural word of God? We've learned how to ask good questions and be good listeners. We've learned how to think things through logically, and it's been great. This class that you're about to watch is sensitive. In this class, this is part 2 of a 2-part series on answering objections brought out by the LGBTQ plus community. Because that community, by the way, are not our enemy. We're not their enemy. We're all made in God's image, and we all deserve love and compassion and dignity and kindness, and I trust that you'll find that in this video. But just like any other community, they've been hurt in certain ways. And sadly, and worse, they've been hurt by people calling themselves Christians. So we want to be extra kind and loving, just like we're kind and loving to anybody. In this video, we're going to talk about the objections that we often hear about that come from the LGBTQ plus community, because we do disagree on stuff. Look, they often disagree with us on Jesus and the Bible, and that's fine. We'll hear them out. And we disagree with them on gender and sexuality, and hopefully they'll hear us out. Look, if that's you, if you're part of the LGBTQ plus community and you've clicked on this video, good for you. Thank you for being open-minded. I've watched a lot of your content, and I'm glad that you're watching our content too. You're not our enemy. I'm not your enemy. I believe that we're all made in God's image, and we all deserve love. And I hope that you'll find that in this video. However, I do like that my videos are family friendly. This one, not so much. We're gonna deal with adult topics. We're gonna use adult words, and we're gonna show some videos that are very adult in nature. So parents, you might want to, take your kids and the little ones and off they go. This is not a good video for them, even though a lot of my other videos are. Again, I'm so proud of my high schoolers. They were riveted. This lecture is almost 2 hours long, and they stayed with it. They stayed in their seat. They weren't fidgeting. They were asking good questions. They were taking good notes, and they were showing love and kindness to a group of people who often experience a lot more pain than most people do. Because whatever you think of the LGBTQ plus community, and specifically this one is focusing on transgenderism, those are people who are in a lot of pain. And Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. And so I hope that God will use us to help heal people who are brokenhearted. There's a lot of suffering in this world, and I believe God wants to raise up ambassadors for Christ to be agents of healing through loving kindness, discourse, all showing dignity and respect. Thank you for watching this. If you have any questions at all, I'm pretty easy to find on online. I'm on social media, and I have a website, so you can get me through my website, great-news.org. You can send me an email, you can text me, you can call me. If you're local, we'll get together. Coffee's on me. Again, I thank you for watching this. I hope I gave you enough time, parents, to get the little kids out so that you can focus on this very serious and sensitive and vital topic. May God bless you as you watch this. If you find it useful, please share it with others. Thank you so much. Well, welcome, homeschoolers. How are you guys today? Good. Oh, boy, you guys are barely alive. How are you guys today? Good. There you go. There you go. I thought I'd have to go up to Dunkin' Donuts and get you all a coffee, but now I don't have to do that, so that's good. Hey, you know what? I want to say how much appreciate how you guys were last week when we did LGBTQ Part 1. You guys showed a lot of maturity. Seriously, it's a sensitive issue. This is about real people. This is stuff that people struggle with. People maybe even in this class, and it's a real thing, and you guys weren't all weird about it, and you weren't like, you showed a lot of maturity and kindness and compassion and love, and I really appreciate that. So we're going to continue that this week, and we're going to really focus this week on transgenderism. And I've never done that before. This is the first time I've taught that. Usually I teach LGBT all as one class, but just in the last few years, it's just been an explosion of information. You don't have to be on social media to see that. Transgenderism has exploded in popularity, in number of cases, in controversy, and all kinds of things. People don't know what to do with it. And so hopefully we will have a chance to look at the roots of it, how it started. As I did my research, I was fascinated. So hopefully we'll learn some good stuff. And if anybody's watching this on YouTube that is in transgender, I hope that you'll know that we're not here to pick on you. You're not our enemy. We're not your enemy. We're just people that are all made in God's image, and we want to be able to understand one another. And so that's what we're going to do. May the Lord help us to be kind to everybody. In fact, that brings us to our vital truths. This is a good segue, because I hate that I have to make this our number one vital truth, but if you're on your notes on page 42, you can put it in. We approach people from the LGBTQ plus community with love. And it's sad that I even have to say that. Of course, I mean, we should approach anybody with love, but that's not always the case. The first time I ever heard of a gay person was I was 10 years old. And a very popular comedian at the time came out with a special, like an hour-long comedy special. And my dad, even though it was rated R, my dad let me watch it. I know I wasn't parented that well, but at 10 years old, I'm watching this rated R special, and the comedian, made fun of gay people, big time, like roasted them in a nasty way. And that's not right, by the way. Look, it was 1983. These things were different back then. But it wasn't right. But that was the first time that I was even introduced to the concept of a gay person. And this person actually, the comedian, made specific references to how they have sex and all of this stuff. It was very graphic. And I know that my dad was laughing when he was watching it. My older brothers were laughing. And everybody in the audience was laughing. So what did I do? I laughed too. And I learned gay people are weird, and the way they have sex with each other is weird and unnatural and horrible. And that's not the way, no, that's not the way we're going to treat anybody. We don't treat people that way. That video was wrong that I saw. We treat everybody with love and kindness and compassion. And not just the gay community, anybody. Someone's an atheist, we treat them kindly. And we treat them with love. If someone's a Scientologist, we don't agree with that, but we're going to treat them nicely. If someone's a homeless person and they don't smell good, you know what? We're going to treat them kindly too. And we're going to treat everybody kindly. Even if someone roots for the New York Jets, we're still going to treat them kindly, because as Christians, that's what we're called to do. Jesus treats us kindly. So remember, that's the number one. They're not people who have different ideas of gender, sexuality, orientation than us. They're not our enemy. They just want to be loved. They're a lot like us. So we're going to treat them with love. We're going to treat them with dignity. The second time I ran into the idea of homosexuality was I had a cousin, and it was probably right around the same time. I was probably about 11 years old, so it was a little later. And I remember my cousin had some gay friends, gay men friends, adults, and they came over my house. And we had, they came over for dinner, and it was fine, whatever. And I remember my dad was a nice guy. I'm bringing up some of his bad points, but he really was a nice guy. But he was a man of his time, and he was wrong in some things. But after the gay men left, he was like, okay, let's clean everything. Like Lysol spray everywhere and blah, 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 blah. People were afraid of AIDS. Like as if AIDS was all over the carpet. AIDS was on the couch. AIDS was on the toilet seat. AIDS was on the kitchen sink. And it was just like, again, what does that tell me as a kid about gay people?
He's very paranoid.
Yeah, like they're weird. They're different. They're other. They're to be made fun of, but not for us, because we're Christ followers. So we're not going to do that. The next thing I want to say is that gender dysphoria, I might call it GD just to save space. It's a real thing. People aren't making it up. Gender dysphoria means that it's a condition when you're uncomfortable in your own gender. So if you're a woman, you have a great anxiety and discomfort about being a woman. People might express it like, I think I should be a man. I don't like that I have breasts. I don't like that I have, female organs. I don't like that I menstruate. A man might say, I don't like that I have a penis. It makes me, and it really does. It's a horrible condition. It's not a condition that I would want on anybody. So, I'm not, when we are talking about transgenderism and we're going to criticize quite a bit of what they teach and what's taught to children particularly, we're not saying that gender dysphoria is a fake thing. It's a real thing. And it's a horrible thing to have. So, my goodness, I would never want that. People suffering from gender dysphoria deserve our compassion. They deserve love. They deserve care. Anybody suffering from anything deserves that. You know, anybody, that's not just, it's, if you suffer from whatever, maybe you have Crohn's disease, that's a terrible thing to have, people have it. Maybe you have cancer, maybe you have whatever, maybe you have other types of, gender dysphoria is not the only dysphoria, there are other types of dysphoria that you can have. And in fact, we're gonna talk about that in a few minutes, but this is just introduction. So understand that if someone truly does have gender dysphoria, we're not gonna treat them like, oh, no, like that's terrible. It's not Christ-like to ridicule anybody. So we're not going to do that. And you know what? That needs to be said, because the reality is that people in the gay community, and again, when I say gay community, that's just I'm substituting that for saying LGBTQ+. And I'm not trying, I know that there's more than just gay. There's lesbian, there's bisexual, and then there's a plus for more things. Sometimes it's awkward for me to say LGBTQ+, so I might say gay community. I don't mean to offend anybody. It's just a substitution because it's just easy to speak. So, because I'm going to say a lot of words during this lecture. So, if anybody's watching this, I don't mean any offense by just saying the gay community. But no, we're not gonna ridicule anybody, because the gay community has been ridiculed. I mean, I gave you an example of that comedian. He was a huge. If I told you his name, you would know who he is, even though you guys weren't alive then. He's a big comedian, and there were lots of comedy like that. And there are people even that call themselves Christians who want gay people dead. The Westboro Baptist Church. We showed pictures of them last week. They go to gay pride parades with pictures that say God hates, and it's an F word that is a slur for gay people. That I don't even want to say that word. It's terrible. The Westboro Baptist Church is sort of like Grape Nuts. Have you ever heard of Grape Nuts, the cereal? I know it's cereal that you guys don't eat, and it's gross. But Grape Nuts, it doesn't have any grapes in it, it doesn't have any nuts in it. Like, I don't know why they call it Grape Nuts. And Westboro Baptist Church is sort of like that too. It's not Baptist and it's not a church, but they call themselves that. And they're just terrible, mean, horrible people that have done horrible things to gay people. A lot of people in the name of Jesus have been very mean to gay people. Or people of the gay community, LGBTQ+, the whole gamut. And that's wrong. So if put yourself in their shoes, of course they think that we hate them. In fact, when I talk to gay people, I told you this last week, you can watch the video if you missed it, but there have been a number of people in the gay community that I've had great conversations about Jesus with, and they always start with them saying, "You hate me, don't you?" And I go, "No, why would I hate you? You're made in God's image, you deserve dignity and respect," and it turns out we have a great conversation, and it's really great. But a lot of times they assume that I hate them, and I understand why, and I want you to understand why, because they've gotten a lot of crap from people calling themselves Jesus followers. But we know, if you really want to know what Christianity is about, if you look at Jesus, you don't look at the people who claim to follow him, because we do a bad job at it. More vital truths. Sadly, the world has a solution for gender dysphoria. They say, "Oh, you got gender dysphoria? We've got a solution for you. We've got things we can help you with, and we're going to go through what those are." And they hurt people. The reason why I have this class is not because I'm against transgender people. I'm for them. I think what the world is doing is hurting them more. And in fact, I have science and statistics to show that. So please bear with me. So we're not here teaching. Why are you even having this lecture, Mark? Leave transgender people alone. Because I believe, and I hope that I will show and demonstrate, that what the world is doing to fix or to help gender dysphoria is actually making it worse. I think one day we'll look back at it, and it'll be like looking back at putting leeches on people to drain blood out of them. You know how we look back at that and go, how did anyone think that was going to help somebody? I think the same thing with what currently is being used for people with gender dysphoria. Another truth we need to understand is that we're all broken. Every one of us. Maybe you guys in the class, I'm sure, say, "Well, I'm not transgender." Well, good for you. I'm glad you're not transgender. But you're going to have something that's broken in you. We all have something. Adam and Eve were made perfect, and they blew it, and we're all children of Adam and Eve, and we all have something. That's why marriages fall apart. That's why children are abused. That's why people go hungry, even though there's enough resources for everybody. Because everybody's broken. Myself, I'm broken. I've shared with you before, I've struggled with an anxiety disorder since I was 11 years old. Why? I don't know. Because I live in a broken world. And that's why. you know? And I know it's hard to believe, but I'm not a perfect person. I know it's hard to believe.
That's
I'm not
crazy.
I thank you. You get candy for that. Thank you so much. There we go. That's what I was going for. But look, we're all broken. We're all going to struggle with something in this world. If you don't struggle with sin, then you're struggling with lying to yourself. We all do. Our feelings are often inaccurate. Part of the transgender movement is they really want you to go by your feelings. I feel like a woman. I feel like a man. Well, our feelings are famously inaccurate. All the time. We, as human beings, we mess up all the time. I mean, I often show this. I say, which one's longer, the blue or the red? And what do you think most people are going to say if I ask you which one's longer, the blue or the red?
The red.
Yeah, everybody says the red, just about, unless you're like snotty homeschoolers like you guys and you already know where I'm going with this. But everybody says red, and then I go, oh, really? Now which one's longer?
Blue.
Yeah, the blue. And you know, they're identical. They're exactly the same, but it's an optical illusion. Our eyes are not trustworthy. We make how we feel about things, how we think about things, we're easily tricked. We get things wrong all the time. I told you last week, I can drop you in the Sahara Desert, and you will be certain that you see water. Absolutely, you're certain of it. But there's no water there. It's called a mirage. And you know, as human beings, we get things wrong. We shouldn't go by just what we think or feel. We should go by what is true. You guys remember a number of weeks ago we defined the word truth? Anybody remember what the definition of truth is? That which conforms.
What's real?
Yeah, that's right. That which conforms to what's real, or that which conforms to reality. That's what's true. And that's what we need to follow. Not just what we think, but what actually is. People with gender dysphoria are not further away from God than other people. So if you've got Stacy and she has gender dysphoria, and you've got I don't know, Elizabeth and she doesn't, you know what? They both need Jesus. Equally. It's not like, oh, well, Stacy really needs Jesus because she has gender dysphoria. Look, Elizabeth's got problems too. She's got sins. That S-I-N, that stinky inner nastiness that we all have. That's the problem with humanity. We have sin, Jesus is the cure. People with gender dysphoria, yep, they've got problems just like everyone else. They're not further away from God. And every person needs compassion, love, and redemption through Christ. If you're a Christian, if you've been born again, if you've turned from your sins and trusted in the Lord, then you've received that compassion, love, and redemption. And you're going to continue to receive compassion and love from God. So you're no different. You know, so someone with gender dysphoria, they need love, compassion, and redemption too, just like anybody else, just like atheists do, just like agnostics do, just like Republicans, Democrats, anarchists, communists, everybody, blue people, green people, purple people, yellow people, every people need that. That's one thing we all have in common. A couple more vital truths. Now the society doesn't like to say this, but it's true. It's not abnormal. It's normal, common even, and perfectly fine for some boys to be quote unquote effeminate. It happens. I'm one of them. Okay, I know this is going to be hard for you to believe, but with my physique, I was never a jock. I know, hard to believe. I know. You're just going to have to take me on faith on that one. But no, when I was in school, I was a late bloomer. I think I hit puberty when I was like 28 years old. So when I was thinking about me in elementary school, I was little. I was scared. I was whiny. I cried a lot. I was bullied, and I was pretty effeminate. I loved like things that were traditional for girls. I liked musicals. I liked movies that made me cry and got into the characters. I still do. I still love a chick flick, like to this day. You know, and I still will like chat with you about your emotions like all day. And if you want to rearrange furniture and talk about it, I'll do that. And let's light a scented candle. I'm like that. I'm that guy. And you know what? That's okay. That doesn't mean I'm not a man. I am a man. But I'm more on the effeminate side. Thank God I didn't grow up today. Imagine a person like me growing up today, they would have said, oh, you're transgender. More of that later. It is normal. It is common and perfectly fine for some girls to be tomboys. You ever hear of a tomboy? I know it's out of fashion today, right? It's just a girl that likes, to get dirty and rough, and, she's not really into Barbie, she's more into G.I. Joe, and she wants to climb trees, and she wants to play football and knock you over and all that. And that's okay. It's fine. It doesn't mean that they're not a woman. It's okay. Yes, sir?
My mom was a tomboy when she was a teen.
Well, there you go. And your mom's a woman. Right. It's okay to be a tomboy. It's totally fine. Being a feminine boy or a tomboy girl does not mean that you're in the wrong body. And it's weird that we even have to say, like, these 13 vital truths really should be duh. But we live in a world where they're not duh. So that's why I wrote them down and put them in your notes so you can have them. Because we need to know these things. Now, the topic of transgenderism is the #1 topic I hear as a Christian. When people find out that I'm a Christian, absolutely, sometimes they say, oh, well, what do you think about evolution? Sometimes they'll say, what do you think about abortion? What do you think about this? But the #1 thing people will say is, I bet you hate trans people, don't you? That is absolutely the #1 thing I hear all the time, and whatever #2 is isn't even close. Yes, sir?
That sounds like a leading question.
It is a leading question, absolutely. But that's why we're talking about it today. We want to think about it, we want to think about it honestly, intelligently, with compassion, with dignity, with maturity. But we're going to have people in our life. Remember him? Remember Hector, the heckler? Mr. Heckler. And he's going to say something, he's going to put his finger, he might not literally put his finger, but basically, people can be pretty rough. And they'll say, sex is about biology, but gender is a construct. Have you heard that? Yeah. People say it like it just is. Like people just say that. So your sex is what your chromosomes say, but your gender is a construct. That could be whatever you want it to be. It can change. It's malleable, meaning bendable. It's in your mind, and it's how you feel about yourself. You are the gender you feel you are. And I bet even at your age, you've heard people say this, or a version of this, because this isn't even a debate anymore. This is like they take it like an axiom. An axiom is a statement that doesn't even need defending. But what I want to know is, where did that come from? The idea that sex and gender are two separate things? Like society thinks, oh yeah, that's just settled. But is it? Now, over the next few moments, I want to talk about how society started to believe that, because we haven't believed that forever. Like, we've lived for thousands of years without believing that. That's a very new idea. How new? Like the 1960s. And I know that sounds like forever to you guys ago, but it's really not. It's not that long ago. How do you know that it's true that sex and gender are separate things? And again, most people don't even question it. If you go on Tumblr, it's not even a debate. It'd be like debating whether or not lobster shells are hard, or whether or not, my bottle of water will fall to the ground if I let go of it. Like, that's the way people take it. It just is. But is it? I want to tell you about Dr. John Money. He was born in 1921. He died in 2006. He's a psychologist, sexologist, and professor. He was a very he still is a very influential man. Has anybody heard of him? Just one? Okay. I'm surprised that even one. He's not well known, but he has contributed so much to transgender ideology. It all comes from him. And people don't even know why. He established the John Hopkins Gender Clinic in 1965. He invented the terms gender identity and sexual orientation. You've heard of gender identity? You've heard someone say, oh, my sexual orientation is this? They're quoting John Money, whether they know it or not, and likely they don't know it. So I'm not saying that everybody out there knows Dr. John Money and they're reading his books and stuff. No, but they're influenced by him without realizing it. So let's learn about this man, because he's the father of transgenderism. He was so influential, and he still is. Even though people don't know his name anymore, well, I mean, academics do, and nerdy people like me, and now you. But for the most part, when you reach, people on Tumblr, people on TikTok, they don't know that they're parroting what Dr. Money taught, but they are. He invented terms like chronophilia and nepiophilia, which means sexual attraction to toddlers and infants. Yes, sir?
isn't that just called a pedophile?
Pedophilia is maybe older kids, and yes, but it's all gross, and it's all unnatural. But chronophilia and nepiophilia is really, really, really little kids, like toddlers, infants. He taught that pedophilia, among other chronophilias, are ultimately, quote, harmless in most instances. He said that. He said that, I put the receipts up, you can look for it yourself. Untimely sex between philias and philisms, sexual offender treatment. Dr. Money told a Dutch journal on pedophilia. First of all, how crazy is it that there's actually a journal that's dedicated to pedophilia in the world, that even exists? But there is a journal, that, and probably many of them, that are just all about pedophilia, and he gave an interview, and he said, quote, "If I were to see the case of a boy aged 10 or 12 who's intensely attracted towards a man in his 20s or 30s, if the relationship is totally mutual and the bonding is genuinely totally mutual, then I would not call it pathological in any way." That was an interview he gave to the Journal of Pedophilia, spring 1991. Pathological is a big word meaning abnormal. He's saying it's not abnormal. It's not abnormal. John Money thinks it's fine for a 10 or 12-year-old to be in a sexual romantic relationship with a man in his 20s or 30s. So understand, when we're quoting John Money, who he is. I hope it's without controversy to say he was screwed up. He's a bad man. Again, we're all broken in some way. He needed the love of Christ just like anybody else, but until, unless Christ redeemed him, we would expect that he would change his views on that. But he taught those views, sadly. There are evil people in this world that teach evil things, and I'm sorry to have to teach you that. That's one of my least favorite things about being a parent. A parent is teaching my kids that there are some evil people in the world. It's really sad. See, the word gender, before John Money, gender always applied to grammar. We don't have this in English, so it's kind of hard. Anybody here study Spanish or French or any? Okay. You know how words have gender? Like a table has a gender. And like a light bulb has a gender, which is weird because it's like, we don't think of it that way. Yeah.
Like say window would be la ventana.
Yeah, window, la ventana. Right, so female. Even, yes, sir.
Especially in Latin, too.
Yeah, in Latin, yeah. In fact, a lot of languages have this. In English, we're weird. We're actually weird that we don't have that concept, so it's hard for us to understand. But that's what gender, before John Money, it was a grammatical thing. But John Money, what he did that was revolutionary was he applied gender to people. He was the first person to apply gender to people. And he was the first to separate it from biological sex. He said gender's one thing, your sex, meaning whether or not you're a man or a woman, like XY, XX, is a different thing. So they could be different from one another. So when people today say that, this is who they're quoting. They're quoting a really disgusting, evil man. And we haven't even got into how evil he is. It's going to get worse. He believed gender was malleable, meaning flexible, you could change it, within the first 2 years of life. And he spoke on that, he had theories on that as long as you're under the age of 2, you could be whatever gender and grow up however you are, and you'll become a woman or a man, depending on how you're told to grow up. As long as we catch you before the first 2 years. That was his theory. And he was, and he's giving lectures on it, he's teaching it, he's famous, he's getting money, he's doing all these things, but he couldn't prove it in real life. I mean, how do you prove something like that in real life? It's one thing to have a theory on it, and to be, whoa, Dr. John Money of Johns Hopkins University. I mean, he had very respectable degrees, but how's he going to prove it? Well, he had an opportunity to do that. See, Dr. John Money is why people today they just assume it, that gender and sex are separate and that gender is a construct. So if you're here and you think gender is a construct and gender can be malleable, okay, you can believe that, but I want to just gently have you question, why do you believe that? Do you know that you're being influenced by this man? Most people who parrot this as an axiom, again, an axiom is just something that it doesn't even need to be defended. Settled science. Do not know that they are following the father of the transgender movement, Dr. Money. And they're saying something that has not been true or even thought of from the great majority of humanity. I mean, this is a relatively new idea. But Dr. John Money got his chance to prove his theories. Bruce and Brian Reimer, identical twin boys, were born in 1965 in Canada. So twin boys, that's great for an experiment because they have the same genetics. How cool is that? They were born in 1965 in Canada. They were circumcised at 18 months old. And they were circumcised in a very unusual manner. They used an instrument that was both a knife and a cauterizer at the same time. So it had electricity that went through it. Cauterizing is like burning something so that it so that it doesn't bleed. So that was the instrument that they used to circumcise. And unfortunately, the procedure was botched on the first boy, and his penis was completely burnt off. Yeah, I call that a botch. The instrument malfunctioned. What do you do if your parents are twin boys and one of them doesn't have a penis anymore? I mean, it must be horrible. You don't know what to do. And then you hear about Dr. John Money in the United States. You're in Canada. He's in Johns Hopkins. You go visit him. He's the expert on sex and gender. I've heard about him. So we're going to go see him. And they were Bruce and Brian. Were brought to Dr. John Money in 1967. And Bruce was renamed Brenda. He had crude surgery, genital surgery, to make something that looked somewhat like a vagina, although he would need more surgeries later as he grew. Later, he was given estrogen, and he was raised as a girl, and nobody was allowed to know the difference, not even Bruce himself. Not even his twin brother, Brian. Nobody was allowed. This is what Dr. Money said. Because, hey, they're only 18 months old, they're under 2 years, gender's malleable, raise them as a girl. It'll be fine. Yes, sir?
But then why hide that truth?
Why hide that truth? Because they believe this is what he had gender theories, that this is perfectly fine. But you can't know that you're really a boy because that will mess up the experiment. And so, according to Dr. Money, Bruce should grow up as a girl. I mean, he's 18 months old, he doesn't know any different. He's Brenda now, and he's a girl. He's gonna get long hair, they're gonna put him in a dress, there's a picture of him, and everybody knows that that's Brenda. And nobody knows, except for the parents and Dr. Money, that it's anything different. And Dr. Money's gonna prove to the world that he's right. Unfortunately for Dr. Money, Brenda rejected her femininity from a very young age. She wasn't a very good girl because she wasn't a girl. She rejected girl clothing, girl play. She preferred boy toys and playing rough. She was bullied at school. The kids called her a cave woman because she was so masculine. She got into literal fistfights. It didn't work. You can give a boy estrogen, he's still a boy. You can put a dress on him, he's still a boy. But it's worse because there's no internet back then. Phone calls were expensive. Communication didn't go very well. So all while this is going on, Dr. Money is going around telling everybody about the Reimer twins and what a success story they are. How his theories worked, and he got great fame and money and wrote books and journal articles and got to go to special places and be the scholar, Dr. John Money, on sex and gender. And to this day, people use his theories because of the Reimer twins was such a success. But it wasn't a success, and Dr. Money knew it because he saw the Reimer family every year, and he was aware that Brenda was rejecting her femininity, even though he didn't tell that to the scientific community. He knew it. He saw her every year. Dr. Money showed Brenda pornographic images to persuade her that she was a girl. Actually showed her a child pornography. Look, this is what girls do. This is who you are.
That's crazy.
He forced the twins to undress so they could inspect the differences in their genitalia. Look at your brother, he has a penis. Look at you, you're flat, you have a vagina. See, you're a girl. So stop fighting people, put your dress on and keep it on.
This guy's insane.
This guy is insane. Yeah, this guy's insane. And I want you to understand that because when people say gender's a construct, they got that from an insane person. And they don't even know it. If you go on TikTok, you're going to hear Dr. Money's theories all over the place. Oh, gender's whatever you want it to be. If you think you're a girl, you're a girl. That's all John Money, all of it. And he was insane, yes. The twins recounted that Dr. Money, in an attempt to get Brenda to act female, forced the two into, quote, childhood sexual rehearsal play. He made them, as like 8-year-olds, play sex on each other. Yeah, not only is that ancestral and child abuse and pedophilic, it's disgusting. Starting at age 6, according to Brian, in an interview he gave, the twins were forced to act out sexual acts with Brenda playing the female role. See, Dr. Money needed Brenda to act like a girl in order for his theories to be right. So he forced her to act like a girl. Money made Brenda get down on all fours, and I'm sorry this is graphic, but this is from an interview that he gave. Made Brenda get down on all fours, and Brian was forced to come up behind him and place his crotch against his buttocks. Money also forced Brenda, in another sexual position, to have his legs spread with Brian on top. And on at least one occasion, Money took a photograph of the two children doing these activities. This next video is from a longer documentary on Dr. John Money and the Reimer twins. So the first part is a reenactment, but the second part is you'll actually see Brenda. You'll see Brenda, the real person, is in this clip, so pay attention.
This is the one part of the film not based on existing transcriptions, and it is not clear precisely when this interview may have taken place. It is based on accounts given by the twins, who were both present.
Now, take your clothes off.
No.
Take your clothes off.
No.
I want to make you understand what I'm getting at. Now, take your clothes off.
No.
Move, come on, move. Take your clothes off now. Good. Now, what's the difference? Look down there. What does Brian have? A penis. Right. And what do you have?
Flat is flat.
That's right. That's how you know you're a girl. Now stay there. I'm going to take a couple of photographs. Don't move.
When my folks weren't around, well then, we did what we were told, and if we didn't, then we got yelled at to the point where we thought we were going to get backhanded. If we were told to take our clothes off, well, eventually we took our clothes off and sat on the couch, had photos of us taken.
If this incident took place, it may have been reported in files that Dr. Money gave to the Kinsey Institute, and which he will not allow to be released.
I have 2 years of my files that are buried, and those are the same files where I was on the couch, nude, getting photographed into positions. So he can sit there and paint himself rosy all he wants. I know better.
Dr. Money, he like any doctor, he kept a lot of notes. He kept all of his interviews. He kept everything. But 2 years worth of information on the Reimer twins he gave to the Kinsey Institute. We don't have time to go into the Kinsey Institute, but boy, that's one. And to this day, they're not released. Nobody's seen them. So some people will say, well, the twins made this up. But look, there he is saying, no, this happened, and 2 years of my life with Dr. Money is private. I can't even see it. So you decide for yourself who you believe. At age 14, Brenda was so suicidal that the twins were told the truth. Their parents were like, we have to tell. She's literally gonna take her life because she felt like I don't belong, like something's wrong with me. What is wrong with me? And she was told that you're not a girl, you're a boy. You were born a boy, you are a boy. Brenda was relieved. Yes, I'm not crazy. And he transitioned back to a male. Of course, he was always a male. We say transition back to a male. He's always a male. He was just a male. You can cut off a penis, you can put him in a dress, you can let his hair grow long, you can give him estrogen, still a male. And he named himself David. And he said the reason why he named himself David is because he saw himself as the biblical David versus Goliath, who was Dr. John Money. Yeah. So, originally Bruce, renamed Brenda, then David. He eventually got married and adopted his wife's children. Brian, his twin brother, did not fare so well. His treatment by Dr. Money over the years plunged him into schizophrenia. I don't know if you guys are familiar with schizophrenia. It's a very dangerous psychological disorder where you see visions, you hear noises, you oftentimes think that like songs on the radio is about you. You sometimes get excessive. It's a terrible way to live. A lot of people die of it because you just can't live that way. It's a horrible thing. And in 2002, at age 36, tragically, Brian took his own life by overdosing on his psychiatric medication. Things didn't go so much better for David. 2 years later, at age 38, David Reimer shot himself in the head with a shotgun. Both brothers were victims of Dr. John Money's dangerous gender theories. This is what happens when you take children every year to see a psychopath, to act out sexually at a young age, and to do all kinds of weird stuff. You screw them up. Meanwhile, because there was no internet, it's not going to be a national story that a Canadian man shoots himself in the head with a shotgun. Dr. John Money, for decades, received fame and fortune by using the Reimer twins as proof that his theories on gender were correct. He published books, spoke at symposiums, telling the world, I told you I was right, I did this on twins and it worked. Now, today, Dr. John Money has been mostly discredited by many, even in the LGBT community, but his theories have not been discredited. Like, people even, I don't want to give the impression that people in the LGBT community who even heard of Dr. John Money think, oh yeah, he was great. No, they will discredit his methods, but they still cling to what he taught, especially that gender is a construct. That is still the basis for transgenderism to this day. So again, when you're on TikTok and you're on Tumblr and you're on whatever, and people are like, well, you know that gender is a construct. Really? How do we know that? How do we know that? So what about today? This is a bit of a long paragraph, but it's worth reading. Gender dysphoria, formerly known as gender identity disorder, is characterized by a severe and persistent discomfort in one's biological sex. You're uncomfortable with your biological sex. It typically begins in early childhood. That's important. It typically begins in early childhood, ages 2 to 4, though it may grow more severe in adolescence. But in most cases, nearly 70%, childhood gender dysphoria resolves. Meaning, if a child believes that they have gender dysphoria, in most cases, up to 70%, and I've seen other studies say up to 90%, it goes away on its own. Like, you don't even have to do anything. You don't even have to give them counseling. It just, people literally grow out of it. And it's usually like tomboys and effeminate boys, and they just realize, okay, like me, like I think, okay, so I'm more on the effeminate side, so what? It's fine. Historically, it affected a tiny sliver of the population, roughly 0.01%, and almost exclusively boys. That's important. For all the years we've been studying gender dysphoria, it's almost always males who think they should be women. And it's only 0.01% of the population. Before 2012, in fact, there was no scientific literature on girls aged 11 to 21 ever having developed gender dysphoria at all. Never, before 2012, there were no there might have been girls who struggled with gender dysphoria, but it never came to science. Like, they never went to a doctor for it. Never. Do you think it's that way today? No. And this was only 2012. It's not that long ago. That's like 13 years ago. In the last decade, that changed, and dramatically. The Western world has seen a sudden surge of adolescents claiming to have gender dysphoria and self-identifying as transgender. For the first time in medical history, natal girls, this means girls, are not only present among those so identify, they constitute the majority. Meaning before, girls almost never had gender dysphoria, now they're the majority. Something, only in 10 years, like what happened? If evolution were true, did somehow something happen in our genetics that now girls are getting gender dysphoria like crazy? Is that a biological reality? Or is something else happening? That comes from the book Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters by Abigail Schreier, a must-read on this topic. Target refused to sell this book. Amazon was given a whole lot of pressure not to sell it. I bought it on Kindle and read it on Kindle, and I wonder if someday I'll open my Kindle library and it'll be gone. The most recent Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual is what all medical practitioners use to diagnose psychological disorders. And it's big, it's a big book, it's important, it's how they decide whether you have an anxiety disorder or obsessive compulsive disorder or gender dysphoria or any number of things, and it gives all the steps to looking into that. So this is like as official as it gets. The most recent DSM reports an expected incidence of gender dysphoria at 0.005 to 0.014% for natal males, and a much lower 0.002 to 0.003% for natal females. That's 0.003, that's a very small number of people, based on the number of those who a decade ago sought medical intervention. So they got those numbers from a decade ago, so like 2010. This is an incidence of fewer than 1 in 10,000 people. Remember that. Less than 1 in 10,000 people had gender dysphoria like 2 decades ago. 1 in 10,000. So what about now? Well, in the last decade, adolescent gender dysphoria has surged across the West. In the United States, the prevalence has increased by over 1,000%. It's 1,000% more. 2% of high school students now identify as transgender, according to a 2017 survey of teens issued by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Okay, I'm gonna read that again. 2% of high school students. That means if you get 100 kids, 2 of them are gonna say, yeah, I'm transgender. That's a lot. I mean, we probably got more than 100 kids in this co-op right here. In Britain, the increase is 4,000%, and 3/4 of those referred for gender treatment are girls. It used to be that girls never had transgender dysphoria. It used to be that only boys had it, and they knew about it since they were 2 to 4 years old. They knew about it their whole life. But it was only 1 in 10,000. Now, it's mostly, as much as 3/4, girls. They never had gender dysphoria. They grew up as girly girls. They loved their Barbies. They loved their unicorns and all that stuff. They loved all their pink and pastel and everything. And then all of a sudden they hit teenager and they're like, oh, I'm transgender. They call it sudden onset gender dysphoria. That never happened before. It's brand new. It just started in the 2010s. Never happened before. Okay guys, when something that never happened before suddenly happens in a community, it's not biological. It's not an action. Think of okay, for instance, so let's say we build a neighborhood 5 miles from here, and we build a bunch of houses, and we find out that half the people that live there get cancer. Wouldn't that make us think, what's up with that neighborhood? You'd think that there was probably radon or something in the air, and there would be, and people would look at the water and they'd study, because they'd say no, it's impossible for half the people in one neighborhood to get cancer. But when it comes to gender dysphoria, that's what happened, and you're not allowed to be curious about it. You're not allowed to say, what's going on? Why? In fact, they'll tell you, this is what they'll say. They'll say, there was always that many transgendered people, they just kept it in the quiet. There were all these people who really did have gender dysphoria living in secret. It's possible, right? Is that possible? Because if we're seeing all these transgender people now, but we didn't see them before, it could be, maybe society didn't allow for it. It was rude back then. You had that comedian making fun of people, so people wouldn't tell anybody. But I can prove to you that that wasn't the case, and we'll do that in a few minutes. Given the sudden surge in the abrupt shift in demographics from majority boys with history of childhood gender dysphoria to a majority adolescent girls with no such history, this was the sort of thing that should have been on many scientists' radar. But it wasn't. no one's allowed to ask why. If you ask why, you're ostracized. If you ask why, you're ghosted, you lose your job, you lose your grants, you lose your friends, you lose your standing, you lose everything. Because sometimes the narrative is more important than the science. The CAS review was put out by the National Health Services, NHS of England. That's like their big, the people that are in charge of medicine in England is NHS. And look at these numbers of transgender people. In 2009 and 2010, a very small number. 10 and 11, it goes up a little bit, goes up a little bit, goes up a tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit, and then boom, goes through the roof. Is this biology? So what is it? Well, we'll get to that. This isn't some conservative Christian mean thing that some jerky Christians who hate gay people put together. This is the United Kingdom's National Health Services published this. I want you to meet Helena Kirshner and let her tell you her story, because I've listened to a lot of what's called detransitioners. These are particularly girls who transition to male, and then they regret it, and then they go back. And there's more and more of these coming out all the time, detransitioners. Do a search for it on YouTube, you'll see a lot of stories. I particularly like the way Helena Kirshner told her story to Michael Knowles, so I'm going to show you clips from that interview, and I think you'll find it interesting and terrifying at the same time. Terrifying because it could happen to anybody.
As a child, I wasn't very atypical in like a gender sense. I liked girly clothes. I had no problem with it. I had no problem with girl toys. So it was never an issue for me. But what really kind of changed that for me was around the time I was 15 years old. I was going through a period in my life where I just didn't have a lot of friends. I was having body insecurities that were just really kind of tormenting me. And this led me to go online a lot. I kind of stopped having friends in the real world. I stopped really engaging in school, and I turned to internet communities that allowed me to discuss some of my interests and my passions with other young girls. And in these internet communities, for me, that was a website called Tumblr. It's the gender ideology is very prominent there. And as kind of a prerequisite to being able to participate in those social communities, you have to really agree with the gender ideology. And there's a lot of social incentives to do something like change your pronouns from a she, her to a they, them. That's a very small step that isn't an instant commitment to like becoming a boy or transitioning. So that's how it started for me. I felt that kind of social pressure. And so I did start to change my pronouns. And it took 2 or 3 years before I actually reached that place where I was like, I'm a boy. And it was this feedback loop of getting that positive response from the other people online every time I would do something that was moving towards changing my gender, that led me to, over the course of those years, kind of self-indoctrinate into thinking that I was a boy.
It's so frightening because what you're describing, you were 15 years old, you felt socially awkward, you had body issues. I think that describes every single 15-year-old, certainly every 15-year-old girl. And so you've got this totally common issue. And it wasn't even that you were indoctrinated into this ideology at the mall with your friends or in the classroom even. It was the internet. It was this, there was this portal in your room or on your phone. And in order to be accepted in these communities and to participate in these communities, you had to participate in this ideology.
Absolutely. The ideology is so prevalent, and something that I think a lot of, older generations don't quite understand is that in the perspective of that 15-year-old girl who has had a falling out with her friends, she feels lonely, she feels insecure. those internet communities that they then find that feel so accepting to them, they feel like the be all and end all. It's not just something you're casually kind of browsing to get updates about your favorite show or celebrity. It's like these internet communities are, they're what makes you feel accepted, and they're where you want to fit in. So you're willing to do almost anything to kind of conform to that social group. And it's not necessarily a conscious thing where you're saying, oh, I'm going to change my gender so that I'll fit in. But it's like you have all of these kind of subconscious motivations that are saying, and also things that are very overt. I mean, there are people in these communities who will say, if you don't like your body, that's a sign of gender dysphoria. If you don't fit in with other girls, that's a sign of gender dysphoria. If you don't like the way your voice sounds in a recording, that's a sign of gender dysphoria.
Hold on, I have to pause you there. If you don't like the way...
That's real.
Not one single person on earth likes the way their voice sounds in a recording. That's a universal experience.
Exactly. So you have these messages that as a teenager, you don't really realize how universal it is, but you have these people in these posts and everything telling you that these are all signs of gender dysphoria. And so you have that these subconscious motivations, and you also have that overt kind of brainwashing that happens that encourages you to reinterpret everything in your life as a sign of gender dysphoria.
All right. So let's recap what she said. She said she's 15 years old, not a lot of friends. Okay, I don't know, that's a lot of 15-year-olds. Body insecurities. You couldn't pay me enough money to go back into my teen years and go through puberty again. So much body insecurity. We all have body insecurities. I'm 50 years old, I still have body insecurities. I mean, it's like, I know, hard to believe the body is wonderful as mine. But in all seriousness, this is not that unusual. She was online a lot, internet communities. She said the gender ideology was prominent and expected. And 15-year-olds, they're willing to do anything to be accepted. Remember last week we saw that quote by Erik Erikson that about the prefrontal cortex is a part of your brain that helps you make decisions and to consider long-term ramifications. That part of your brain is not completely formed until the age of 25. So teenagers are almost they're almost hardwired to make dumb decisions. I'm not trying to make fun of you guys. I respect you tremendously. But the reality is you still have more growing to do, especially in your brain. So, you take someone like that doesn't have a fully functioning prefrontal cortex, that can't think, as well long-term, make long-term decisions, and if you don't do this, then you can't be part of this community. You're willing to do anything. And it only took 2 to 3 years. She just started out, I'll change my pronouns. And then she got so much positive reinforcement for that. And then people telling her, oh, you don't like, I've heard other detransitioners say, people said, do you like it when boys stare at your breasts? And she goes, no. And she said, well, then you probably have gender, dysphoria. Right. What girl likes boys staring at their breasts? None. Zero. But this is what you're getting bombarded with online. And you wonder why the numbers shot through the roof around 2015. Let's have her continue her story.
About 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, I did make an appointment at a Planned Parenthood clinic, because at the time there wasn't as many clinics as there are now. So I had to actually travel to another state to go to a Planned Parenthood, because they were one of the only ones offering this informed consent model, which is really the easiest way to get hormones.
So you went into Planned Parenthood. You said, I am identifying as a boy. I think that I'm a boy. Did they say, okay, well, you've got to go talk to some therapists for some period of months or years? Or did they say, here are the pills, lady. Here are the pills, sir. Go have a good day.
Pretty much here, it's not even pills, it's injections. Here are the injections, sir. So yeah, my appointment took about an hour. The first maybe 20 minutes or so was a short back and forth between this social worker that I met at the Planned Parenthood. And actually, if you read my Substack piece, I wrote a Substack piece about basically my whole journey. I show these questions that the social worker asked me, and it's not deep psychological work, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I had this short interview intake process with the social worker. And then she, you know, came back in and said, "You're the perfect candidate for testosterone. Let's get you started." And so I moved on to the nurse practitioner, and the nurse practitioner went over a very short list of risks with me that were very understated. It said things like, "You may have mood issues," which is like, that's not a way to properly convey the possibilities of hormonal treatment. But anyway, so I looked over this short list, and then we started talking about the dosage. And typically when you start a regimen of anything, they start you on a lower dosage. And then if it's decided that you need to go on a higher dosage, then you will gradually move up. And so that's what she suggested to me. And I, being my very confused teenage self, I told her that I think I'm going to need a higher dose because I think I have more estrogen because I have wider hips. And the nurse practitioner just did not question this at all. And she said, "Okay, so how much would you like?" And
it's like a drug
to this
deal.
I said,
This is like when you go to a drug dealer, you know, some of my more derelict friends, they'll go to their drug dealer. You see this with really, you know, kind of like this woman, I guess, questionable, dubious psychiatrists where they'll say, "Okay, I'm going to give you X amount of Adderall." And then, you know, a junkie will say, "No, I'd like 3 times that actually." And they say, "Okay, no big deal." So this woman just goes along with an 18-year-old girl confused about her sex, says, "Yeah, okay, how many milligrams do you want?"
And I say, "You know, what's the highest we can go?" And she says 100 milligrams is usually the highest we do. And if you look at kind of the guidelines, various universities and health systems, they have guidelines, and 100 milligrams is usually the maximum dosage. And so that's what I started on right out the gate as an 18-year-old girl, was 100 milligrams of testosterone as an injection.
So you'd like to think that, okay, fine, I self-identify as transgender because I listen to all these influencers on Tumblr, that at least the medical community will shield you, right? They'll say, "Okay, let's see what's true, but no, that's not the way it is. 20 minutes with a social worker to be diagnosed as transgender. That's all it took. Prescribed testosterone immediately. Side effect warnings were minimized, and given the maximum dose of testosterone without question." This doesn't happen with other parts of medicine. I can't go into a doctor and say, "Oh, I think I have cancer. Can I please have chemotherapy?" "Oh, sure. How much chemotherapy do you want?" "Well, what's the maximum? I'll take that." But yet with gender science, gender medicine, you can do that. And again, Helena's story is not that unusual. If you listen to detransitioners, you're going to see this over and over and over again.
The first kind of symptoms was just more irritability. I just felt kind of antsy, like little things would bother me, things people would say would just kind of set me off. I noticed that my temper was a little bit more out of control. I would snap at people more easily. I didn't really want to be around people all that much because I just didn't feel like myself. Again, I felt so disoriented. So I started isolating a lot more. And then obviously the other obvious effect is like that higher sex drive, which for me as a young girl who I feel like before testosterone, I had a fairly average, female sex drive experience. It just really went through the roof. And I felt really out of control. I felt really overwhelmed. It was not a pleasant experience. So that's kind of where it started out, which I think is somewhat to be expected. But my experience took maybe an unexpected turn, possibly because I was on such a high dose, although there's no answers. I still have never really been able to get answers for some of these things, where that anger would get so intense. I would have like such overwhelming rage attacks that I actually would end up hurting myself instead of hurting others because I was just so out of control. I couldn't control myself. I felt like a monster. And so that was definitely the biggest consequence for me. And I dealt with that maybe once or twice a week or a little bit less at sometimes for a few months. And it eventually got so bad where I had to be hospitalized.
Well, and when you say you were hurting yourself, you're not saying you went into a fit of rage and fell off the bed. You're saying you were actively taking a conscious sort of decision to self-harm.
Yeah, it was. It's a very difficult experience to describe, but I guess before I was on testosterone, when I would have a really strong emotion, it might move me to tears and I would just cry and sob. But while I was on testosterone, I lost the ability to cry very easily. So I would get that intense emotion, but there would be no outlet. And then for one reason or another, that would trigger anger. I would get so angry and frustrated, and that anger was just so overwhelming. And I got the urge to really externalize it. I got the urge to hit things or throw things. I just didn't want to do that. I felt so out of control that I would just kind of take it out on myself to calm myself down and to be an outlet for that rage, because I didn't know how else to handle it. I was completely overwhelmed.
So, temper, anger, rage issues. Yeah, she's on a high level of testosterone. Her body wasn't meant to have that much testosterone. She had an overwhelmingly high sex drive. Again, sex drive is normal, but not that high. Make really bad decisions when that happens. That led to self-harm. That led to needing to be admitted, and she's going to say twice, to a hospital on 2 different occasions. And wait till you find out what the hospital said about it. You won't even believe it.
I actually needed to be hospitalized twice due to this. And sometime after, and just as a side note, not once in either of my hospitalizations or any of my mental health treatment that I was receiving because of these extreme symptoms was the testosterone ever mentioned. That was never brought up. Like I would write down, I'm a biological female, F, and I'm on 100 milligrams a week of testosterone. But none of these psychiatrists and none of these nurses and none of these doctors ever mentioned that testosterone as possibly a reason for my experience. I was just diagnosed with a bunch of different things and prescribed a bunch of different psych meds and just kind of sent on my way. So it took me kind of skipping testosterone doses because I was developing an anxiety of the needle. So I started skipping my doses. And as I started taking the testosterone less, my crazy, insane symptoms started going away. And so that was one of the things that kind of clued me in to like, okay, well, maybe I'm not just like a mentally ill, crazy person. Maybe it's the testosterone. So I started kind of scaling back on that. And then around this time, I was doing a lot of reflecting on, this is not matching up to that fantasy I had as a teenager. As a teenager, I was kind of promised, this is going to save your life. This is going to make you feel authentic. This is going to make you your true self. This is going to make you so happy. You see all this stuff like, it's trans joy, like all this kind of like really frilly, happy, positive language. That's not what happened to me. So I really started kind of comparing my reality versus my expectations before I transitioned. And eventually that led me to just fully realize that it was all a total mistake. And I realized very quickly that I was just really confused and this whole trans thing was not real for me.
I just can't get over the medical malpractice of you get a patient like you comes into the doctor says, okay, well, this young girl is taking an insane amount of testosterone, injecting it into her every single day. Yeah, maybe cut back on the Coca-Colas and you'll feel better. Oh, maybe we should ply her with more drugs. That'll fix it. It couldn't possibly have anything to do with this totally unnatural experimental medical procedure that we've only been doing for like 5 minutes. That is so insanely irresponsible that if you weren't saying it to my face right now, I wouldn't believe it.
I know, and it's almost hard for me to believe, but it's like, think about it. It's not just one doctor who did that either. It's multiple doctors, multiple nurses, multiple therapists that I met throughout 2 hospitalizations and just multiple mental health programs. And none of them ever brought up the testosterone or questioned my trans status whatsoever.
So you think that the medical community would be looking out for us, but you know they have a lot of fear. If they question your self-diagnosis of transgenderism, they could lose their license. They could lose. It's crazy. It's like the inmates are running the asylum. You know, you have a young girl self-identifying as transgenderism, going to a Planned Parenthood, getting out there in under an hour with a ton of testosterone, and it leads her to so much anger and rage and problems, and she goes to hospital twice, and not once did any health worker bring up testosterone as the reason for her rage, anger, and self-harm. Helena had to take herself off the testosterone, and then the side effects went away, and her transgender fantasy was a lie. The fantasy that, oh, the reason why you feel bad about your body is not because everybody feels bad about their body when they're 15. The reason is because you're transgender. So if you go through the transgender medicine, if you go through what is prescribed to you, you'll be better. That's the fantasy, that's the lie, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work in many cases. Yeah.
Would they get arrested for not telling someone about the side effects of the said medication?
Well, would they get arrested for not telling about the side effects? Well, they did tell her about the side effects, but they downplayed it. And, you know, the Planned Parenthood did say that there could be mood changes and things like that. Absolutely. But what I'm more interested in is what about all the follow-up doctors? Like, she got so bad that she had to be hospitalized, not just once, but twice. And nobody said, you know, maybe it's the testosterone.
Is that considered malpractice?
I think it should be malpractice, but it isn't, because it's more important to protect the narrative. That Dr. Money's theories have to be true. That you tell trans people, yep, you're trans, you're trans, you're trans, and this is what you gotta do. You gotta take the hormones. Oh, you're experiencing problems now? Well, it's not the hormones, certainly. I mean, it's crazy. Again, I think we're gonna look back at this period of time and be like, we were crazy. You know, it's bonkers. And you know what's crazy? Is that a lot of people still agree with this. Like, you know, if you agree, if you're saying that this shouldn't have happened, you're in the minority. And you're the bigot, and you're the jerk, and you're the transphobe. But you know what? We have to follow that which corresponds to reality. We have to follow what's true, not what's popular. Let's talk about the WPATH. WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Doesn't that sound very reputable? That sounds very, like, they know what they're talking about, and they are. WPATH is a hugely influential body of doctors and scientists, and they're the ones that, they're considered the experts organization, and they create what's called the standards of care for gender dysphoria that is used around the world. Standard of care is, oh, a young child says that they're transgender, we put them on puberty blockers, so to make puberty not come, give them more time. WPATH says that's what you should do. Oh, a girl like Helena, yeah, put her on testosterone. WPATH came up with that. Oh, she wants to cut off her breasts? Yep, you can do that. WPATH came up with, they came up with what's called the standards of care. And they're considered the experts. Let's learn a little bit about WPATH. WPATH has been collaborating with an organization, I don't know if they're an organization, but a group of people called the Eunuch Archives.
Eunuch?
Eunuch. A eunuch is a male who's been castrated, has his penis or testicles removed, so that they're not really male anymore, they're not female, they're just sort of nothing.
Are they?
Yeah, in the ancient world, people would do this to slaves and stuff. It's gross, it's inhumane, it's barbaric. And so there is an actual group called the Eunuch Archives. What is the Eunuch Archives? Well, the Eunuch Archives began in the late 1990s, but started before that on Usenet groups years before that. So before the internet, now we have the internet, everything's connected. Before the internet, there was sort of a quasi-internet called Usenet. And it wasn't like today where everybody's on the internet and you get a smartphone and everybody has a computer at home and a laptop. No, it was mostly like academics and professional people, and they would connect with a modem over a telephone line typically, and it was very crude, and it was almost all text. Like there weren't really photos on Usenet. I used Usenet like when I was a nerdy kid. But like it was mostly like really nerdy people that even knew about it, and again, you know, professional people. So Usenet existed years before the internet, and you could go on Usenet groups about it. They had Usenet groups about, you know, bicycles, if you're really into bicycles. If you're really into, you know, the Beatles, they had groups on that. And you know, you just go in and you leave messages for people, and sometimes you write stories and you share articles and all kinds of stuff. It's for people that like similar things. Yeah.
So it was a varying chat room?
Yeah, it was kind of like a chat room, but very crude. Like again, not as advanced as today's, but you know, mostly text type of thing. Yeah.
It sounds like an old Reddit.
Like an old Reddit. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And so Usenet was cool. Like I remember I used to go on Usenet all the time because I used to play guitar, and there were like Usenet groups where you can download like chords and stuff for your favorite songs, and you know all kinds. You know, there was Usenet on all kinds of. And one of those Usenet groups was called the Eunuch Archives. The Eunuch Archives hosts over 3,000 pieces of fictional child pornography that detail the rape, torture, and killing of children. So what do you get at the Eunuch Archives? You get pornography that all the users write. And they all read it and go, oh, I like that one. Oh, that one's good. Oh, yeah, I wrote this one. About a bunch of fan fiction about wouldn't it be fun to rape and murder and torture children. That's what's on the Eunuch Archives.
Why hasn't that been reported by like police and government?
Well, again, because why wasn't it reported to police and government? Because, well, first of all, is it illegal to describe it? Like that, these are things that we don't know. Like, I think it's wrong, but like, can you go to jail for just writing a story about it? Like, you didn't actually do it, you just fantasized about it, and you're helping other people fantasize about it. These are the questions that law enforcement needs to figure out in our system. And with AI now, we're gonna really get into that. We're gonna see that, like, is it illegal to create these things? It also, you know, back then it wasn't as well known. Like this was like in the dark. Like you had to, it wasn't like welcome to Usenet. Hey, do you want the Eunuch Archives? Like you had to know somebody to get into it. But it did have like over 3,000 pieces of fiction. In some narratives, children were stunted puberty. They were stunted in their puberty. People who wrote this stuff, they got off on that. They thought they got sexual arousal out of pretending that children got delayed puberties. That's important to know. Some people are turned on by that. In other ones, they're raped by doctors. In others, children are castrated by force as part of a sadistic sexual torture ritual. This is what the Eunuch Archives is. A big collection of pornography about child abuse in the most graphic, disgusting ways. What does that have to do with WPATH? Well, one of the Eunuch Archive's most prominent participants is an unidentified site administrator who uses the moniker Jesus. That's his login name. Isn't that nice? So Jesus claims to have been involved in editing the most recent version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5. Remember, that's the big important document that people use to determine whether or not you have gender dysphoria. And who's helping to write that? A guy that's one of the biggest people involved in the Eunuch Archives. Do you think there's a little bit of a conflict there?
Something ain't right.
Something ain't right. That's the DSM-5 is issued by the American Psychiatric Association. So these are well-respected organizations. And WPATH's newest standard of care. Remember I said WPATH, they're the ones that decide how you treat somebody who claims to have gender dysphoria. Well, how would you like it to know that WPATH, the ones that are coming up with these ideas about giving people delayed puberty, about cutting off their breasts, cutting off their penises, cutting off their vaginas, turning it into a fake penis, that they're being influenced by somebody who's a major user of the Eunuch Archives. A long-standing site contributor of the Eunuch Archives is Dr. Krista Hildeth Willett, and she also has connections to WPATH.
Why is it always the doctors who seem to be evil?
I don't know. You know what, I think evil is not just a doctor thing, I think it's a human thing. I think humans are evil. You know, I think you find evil doctors, you find evil scientists, you find evil parents, you find evil, you know, custodians. We live in a broken world. In 2009, Willett, who is a long-standing contributor to the Eunuch Archives, she was invited by WPATH to speak on the development of standards of care for individuals with male to eunuch gender identity disorder. So this is an influential person to WPATH at a conference in Oslo. And you can read about that here. So when you hear about WPATH, the DSM, and people use that as a hammer to shut you up. Well, the reason why we know that what we're doing for transgender people is right is because WPATH says so. What are you saying, that WPATH is wrong? It's filled with all these intelligent people smarter than you. And that's made you to make you shut up. Like who, what, you're smarter than the DSM-5? That's not an argument, that's a hammer. That's there to shut you up. But you know what, some of those organizations they're made of regular people, broken people, and some of them have a disgusting agenda. John Money wasn't the only weirdo. Here's a whistleblower. I thought I was saving trans kids, now I'm blowing the whistle. Jamie Reed worked at a gender clinic for children, and she thought she was doing great, and she realized that what they were doing was so harmful to kids that she decided to blow the whistle. You guys know what it means to be a whistleblower? That's like someone's on the inside that says, wait, what we're doing is wrong, and usually at great risk to themselves to do it. And now you think, oh, well, Jamie Reed, she's probably some nasty born-again Christian who hates gay people, right? No, she's not. Jamie Reed self-identifies as queer and is married to a transgender man. So she's well in the LGBTQ community, and she thought she was doing great working at a gender clinic, and even she was like, no, we're not helping these kids, we're making them worse. She quit her job of 4 years because, quote, what is happening is morally and medically appalling. Now, this has more weight because it comes from someone who already believes the agenda. Like, she believes in the transgender agenda. So when she's criticizing it, it has a lot of weight. One thing for me, you can say, well, Mark, you're a homeschool dad and a Christian, and, of course you just don't agree with these things. And no, this is a woman who was on the inside. She said that about 70% of new patients who were kids were girls who also suffered from comorbidities like anxiety, ADHD, eating disorders, obesity, and autism, or autism-like symptoms. She said another new group also began to be referred, vulnerable kids from the inpatient psychiatric unit or emergency room at St. Louis's Children's Hospital. So these aren't kids that just have gender dysphoria. They have all kinds of psychiatric problems. But they're just focusing on the gender dysphoria. Oh, no, just become trans and all your problems will go away. But they didn't. Because their problem wasn't transgenderism. Their problem was anxiety, ADHD, eating disorders, autism, that type of thing. But just treat them as transgender. Let's talk about the CAS review. The CAS review was commissioned by the National Health Services of the United Kingdom. We talked about that in 2020. It's an independent review of gender identity services for children and young people. Now understand this, as far as all the things we're doing to kids about transgenderism, Europe is ahead of us. They were doing it more radically and earlier than us. And they saw the danger. And in 2020, the CAS review, again, not made by born-again Christians who hate the gay community, it was done by scientists. It led to a ban on puberty blockers for those under 18. In the United Kingdom, no more puberty blockers for kids under 18. That's a good thing. Puberty blockers are very dangerous. The United Kingdom also said that cross-sex hormones, meaning if you're a boy taking estrogen as a cross-sex hormone, if you're a girl taking testosterone as a cross-sex hormone, they said that can only happen under the age of 18 with extreme caution. So we're not going to do it willy-nilly anymore. I think it should be done never, but hey, this is better, this is good. They came up with the conclusion on their studies that no evidence that social transition relieves distress. Meaning if a kid is distressed with I'm in the wrong body, I'm having all this anxiety, I'm having all these problems. Well, if you transition them, it doesn't take the distress away. Not in the long term. It does initially because they get all this excitement from everybody telling them how beautiful and brave they are. But then within 5 years, they're just as bad. They're just as bad. And the suicide rate stays at 40%. The CAS review calls for a more holistic approach as to why a minor claims gender dysphoria. Yeah, that's big words for, hey, let's look at what else is going on. That's big words for, that's smart. Instead of just saying, oh, you've got gender dysphoria, let's treat it. Let's look at what's going on fully in your life. Let's see what's happening. Holistic approach, good idea. And other European countries are banning social transition, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones. Now, the experts will tell you, and we're going to see this in a video in a few minutes, that puberty blockers are completely safe and reversible. They're totally safe. You put a 9-year-old on puberty blockers, all it's gonna do is delay puberty so they can figure things out, and they have more time to figure things out. And if they decide that no, they're in the right body, you just take them off the puberty blockers, and the pause that it created, you go right back into puberty like you were before. That is not true.
That's a lie.
Right. Studies have shown that puberty blockers may impact bone density. It's not a good thing. Cancers, brain structure, function, and connectivity. It's kind of important for your brain to have the right structure, function, and connectivity, as well as neurodevelopment and adult sexual development, including inability to orgasm, as well as infertility. I think a 9-year-old could understand that, you take these puberty blockers, you might never have an orgasm your whole life. 9-year-old?
They don't even know what that is.
They don't even know what that is. It's ridiculous. And why would parents do this? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Because, you think at least the parent would be like, no, not on my kid. I'm not letting my kid do this. Yeah.
That's not right.
I know. No, I know. Look, we're not attacking people with transgenderism. We're attacking the structure. We're attacking the higher-ups because the higher-ups are hurting them. So if you're watching this and you are struggling with transgenderism, we're not attacking you. We want to help you because the care that you might get is going to hurt you more, and you're already hurt. So why would we hurt you more? But that's what our society does. Now, we're told the lie that, as transgender people, we just want to live our life. We just want to be out of the closet. That's all. But that's not what they want. See, adults are free to live their lives, but they're not free to impose it on minors and put in the closet those who object. See, you and I are put in the closet. You guys shut up. You guys be taken off Facebook. You guys are taken off Twitter or X or whatever it's called today. You guys are going to have your stuff demonetized, and your YouTube videos aren't going to be in the algorithm anymore, and people search for it, they're not going to find you, and all this stuff. If anybody questions any of this stuff, we're the ones that are shut up about it. It's crazy. People say, well, children know they're in the wrong body. Children know. You can trust a child to self-identify as trans. No, children are famously mistaken, which is why we have age of consent laws. Children can't, that's why children, they can't buy Tylenol. Children can't buy cigarettes. Children can't get tattoos or join the military. Because we understand that children make bad decisions. We protect them from that. But a child can say, and I mean a little child, can say, oh, I'm in the wrong body, and whoop, we're going to give you new clothes, we're going to give you a new name, we're going to give you new everything. And sometimes schools do that without telling the parents. Often. Why do parents put up with this? This is why. Because they'll say to you, would you rather have a trans kid or a dead kid? Now, what does that mean? What that means is, Gabe here thinks he's transgender, and he's 14. How old are you?
14.
14, hey, I got it right. And your parents obviously love you, so they think, I don't know, I don't want him to be on puberty blockers and on estrogen and all that stuff. And what your parents would be told is, if you don't get this, if we don't do this, you will kill yourself. You will. You'll have that's what's going to, your life will be so horrible as a trans person who's in the closet, meaning not getting these things, not getting the puberty blockers, that you won't be able to handle it and you'll die. So you better give them the puberty blockers and even mastectomies, cut off breasts, cut off all kinds of stuff. You have to do all that or your child will die. What would you rather have, a trans kid or a dead kid? That's why parents do this. Because what would you do if a doctor said that to you? I don't know, they're a doctor, they know what they're doing, they're experts. Well, yeah, they're the experts that are being influenced by WPATH and the DSM-5 and Dr. John Money. That's who they're being influenced by, whether they know it or not. Well, this is a dumb argument. It's actually a bullying tactic. It's a way to just, it's bullying, it's not true. Because suicidal ideation increases after, quote, gender-affirming care. Again, not right away. If we take Gabe and we let him become Gabriella, and he, I know, but he makes his hair go down and he wears a dress. At first, he's going to get a lot of affirmation. People are going to tell him how brave he is and how wonderful he is. But once that goes away, the suicide rate stays at 40%. And here's the question. This Would you rather have a trans kid or a dead kid? I want you to think about this. This is important. And you could do this as Columbo to somebody. You could say, okay, there's tons of trans people now. There were way fewer trans people like 10 years ago. Why did transgenderism just all of a sudden spike up? Is it because it's a social contagion where people are, sort of forced into it? And they'll go, no, people were transgender back then too, we just didn't know about it. That's what they'll say. Okay, this is where you get Columbo. And you say, okay, so you're saying is there were tons of transgender people that were just living a lie before, that's right. Then why wasn't there a suicide epidemic among minors back then? Because you're telling me, you told me, that if they don't get the care, they're gonna kill themselves. There weren't tons and tons of suicides in the 1910s, in the 2010s, in the 2000s, in the 1900s, in the 1800s, in the 1400s, all the way back to Adam. Yeah, kids commit suicide tragically from time to time, but not in the numbers that you're saying that they should be. So the reality is, no. If you don't give the kid gender-affirming care, they're not gonna necessarily kill themselves. Might they? They might. Any kid could commit suicide. Suicides happen, especially in a population that has mental health problems. But this whole, would you rather have a trans kid or a dead kid, it's a nasty bullying technique, and it's not even true, because where were all the suicides when we weren't transitioning kids? They didn't exist. Where were the suicide epidemic before trans care became fashionable? The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away. See, this is what trans kids are told. All your problems are just gonna go away if I would pretend that you are the sex to which you claim membership. So if a transgender person, they have problems, they're having all kinds of, anxieties and all kinds of things, and they say, well, as long as you believe that I'm transgender, all my problems will go away. That's nonsense. The transgender suicide rate is 40%. It's 40%. That came from Ben Shapiro, who's a commentator on this and does a really good job with it. 40% suicide rate. In the regular population, do you know what the suicide rate is? Anybody? 4%. 4% of people in the regular population commit suicide. So why is it 10 times higher in the trans community? Whether you give them the gender treatments or not, either way, it's still 40%. Now understand, the suicide rate among Jewish people in the concentration camps during the Holocaust was 25%. See, because they're gonna say, the reason why so many trans people kill themselves is because the United States of America is so mean and so awful, and we're mean to transgender people, and we don't blah, 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 and that's why 40% of them are killing themselves. Okay, maybe we are mean to trans people, and we should not be. We should not be mean to them. We shouldn't deny them housing. We shouldn't deny them jobs. We shouldn't we shouldn't prevent them from getting love. We shouldn't prevent them from anything. We should be treated like human beings. And I think, quite frankly, this is being filmed in 2025, transgender people do fairly well in the United States. But the suicide rate's still 40%. Unless you're gonna make the argument that we treat trans people worse than Nazi Germany treated Jewish people in concentration camps, why is the suicide rate so much higher? In Nazi Germany, Jewish people in concentration camps killed themselves at a rate of 25%. Trans people, 40% suicide rate. Are transgendered people treated worse than Jews were treated in concentration camps? Yeah, no, they're not. They're not. Maybe in some Muslim countries they might be, but not here. No. Sometimes people say, well, I just feel like the opposite gender. I'm a boy and I feel like a woman. I'm a woman, I feel like a man. Well, I'm gonna say, how is it possible to feel like something you've never experienced? I feel like a cat. Well, I don't know what a cat feels like. How can I say that I feel like a cat? How can I say that I feel like a woman? What does that mean? Because why? Because I want to watch Joanna Gaines, redo a house? Is that what it means to feel like a woman? Like I want to get nice smelling soap? Like what does that mean that I feel like? You can't say that you feel like something that you've never been. It's just a ridiculous statement. I feel like the opposite gender. How can a male know what it's like to feel like a woman or vice versa? They can't. People say that people with gender dysphoria really believe they're in the wrong body. Like, they really believe it. So why don't you believe them? They really believe it. Well, I have no doubt. I'm not saying that they make it up or they're just doing it for attention or they're just doing it because they hate their parents and they, I'm not saying that, although maybe there might be some people that like that. But no, I'm sure they really do believe it. But there are other dysphorias that exist. People have bulimia. You guys know what bulimia is? That's when someone is not fat. Typically a woman, I would say a woman because statistically it's almost exclusively. They're not fat, they're really skinny, but when they look at themselves in the mirror, they see fat. And they're not making it up, they really believe it. I have someone related to me that has this problem, and it's terrible. Now, what do you think would happen? How would you suppose it would be if we took a young girl with bulimia who's like 90 pounds and 5'5", and said, okay, well, if you believe it, then you are. Yep, I affirm you. You are fat. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut you down to 1,000 calories a day, and we're going to go to the gym, and I'll go with you, and we'll do some running, and I'll give you here's some medicine to give you diarrhea, and I'll help you throw up. And we're going to get those pounds off you. Yeah, I'm affirming you. I'm on your side. I affirm you. What do you think of that approach? What do you think of that standard of care? No, yeah.
That is quite literally sending you the opposite direction.
It's quite literally setting you the opposite direction. It's barbaric and mean, because bulimia is no joke. You're 90 pounds and you start losing more weight, your organs shut down, you die. People die of it. And no, what you have to do is, you don't change the outside, you change the inside. What is it in their head? It's a psychiatric disorder. Why is it that you see yourself as fat? Why do you have such just enlarged views of perfectionism that you have to have every tiny inch of you? I mean, bulimic people, you can see their ribs. It's not good. But they don't see their ribs. They see fat. You have to help them in their mind. You don't change their body. But not so much with gender dysphoria. You don't change the mind, you change the body. There's also another dysphoria. It's called, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's rare, but it exists. It's called body integrity dysphoria, or body integrity identity disorder. Has anybody ever heard of that? Yeah, you have a few people, okay. It's people who really believe they should be disabled. They really do. Like, they have incredible anxiety about the fact that they have an arm or a leg. They think they shouldn't. And it causes them great stress. I'm not minimizing it, it's a real thing. It's real. And they go to doctors and say, will you cut off my leg? And no doctor will do it. You don't cut off perfectly healthy organs because someone has a mental disorder, except in transgenderism. They say, I really feel like I shouldn't have a penis. I really believe my breast shouldn't be there. And they go, okay, we'll cut them off. Why? They don't do that with any other dysphoria. And it doesn't matter whether or not the person really believes it. They're believing something wrong. A schizophrenic person thinks that the song on the radio is about them. They really believe it, but it's not. Sometimes people have psychiatric problems. And again, I'm not using that as a slur. I'm not using that as a way of making fun of somebody. If someone has a psychiatric problem, they need help. They need care. And they are getting care, allegedly, but the care they're getting is hurting them. What about intersex people? People say that, well, sure, that's genetic. Okay, that's a red herring. Intersex is not the same thing. Intersex is a biological birth defect. Normally, you're born with either XY or XX, right? I always forget these ones. XX is female, XY is male, right? I got that right. I had about 50-50 chance to get that right. But sometimes my 50-year-old brain doesn't always serve me well. But sometimes people are born with a birth defect, XXY or XYY, and they have ambiguous genitalia and they have different characteristics. So see, that's like transgenderism. No, that's a birth defect. Those people are not transgendered. Those people are not in a healthy body that think they should be in a different body. They're like my daughter who was born with a birth defect. I have a daughter born with a birth defect. She was born with a cleft lip and palate. When she was born, I have photos. Her whole mouth was open. There's a big hole going all the way here, all the way to the back of her throat. And it's a birth defect. We got it fixed. She had 9 surgeries. You know, she looks great now. You can't even tell. But if we didn't do those surgeries, she wouldn't have been able to speak properly. She wouldn't have been able to eat properly. Food was coming out of her nose, literally, when she was a baby, because there was a big hole in between her nose, nasal passage, and her mouth. And you know, it's kind of funny. Like sometimes, you know, you drink something really fast and like fizz comes out of your nose. That's funny. It's not so fuzzy when you're giving a baby, you know, pudding, and pudding comes out of their nose. It's not normal. It's a defect because we live in a broken world. That's not normal. So intersex people is not, it's not the same thing as transgenderism. Transgenderism is you have a normal, healthy XY or XX body, and your mind thinks it should be something else. Don't let them smush those together, they're separate. I think that gender affirming care is interesting because the definition of gender affirming care is medical, social, and psychological approaches and therapies that aim to affirm a transgender patient's identity or align their physical characteristics more closely with their gender. Meaning, gender affirming care is, oh, you're a man and you think you're a woman? Okay, we'll give you estrogen, we'll cut off your penis, we'll give you fake boobs, we'll do all that. That's gender affirming care. But really, that's the opposite of gender affirming. What gender affirming should be is, no, you're a man. You're actually, I'm affirming that you're a man. And we can do a blood test to show you that. Every cell in your body, including your sperm cells, will show you that you're a man. Now, I don't always love Steven Crowder. I don't know if you know him. He's an influencer on YouTube. I think he can be kind of harsh, and I think he can be kind of rude, and I think he makes fun of people that he should show compassion to. But he did do an interesting video once where Planned Parenthood had they had a new policy that they told everybody about, that they will treat you as the gender that you say that you are, under all circumstances. So Steven Crowder said, let's test that. So he walked into a Planned Parenthood with a hidden camera, and you can find this on YouTube. It's actually very disturbing. And he is clearly a man. He didn't even try to present as a woman. He didn't grow his hair long or wear a wig or wear a dress or anything. And he said, I'm a woman, and he said, I'm here for a pregnancy test. And he wanted to test if they're really gonna treat him like the gender he says he is. And you could see they were a little, the nurses at Planned Parenthood were a little pregnancy test? But eventually he's like, I'm a woman, why can't I have a pregnancy test? And they're like, okay, here you go in the room there, pee on it, bring it back, and we'll analyze it for you. And you can tell they were uncomfortable. Well, here's where Steven Crowder was kind of genius about it. And again, I'm not saying that everything he does is right, because I think he's cruel in a lot of ways, and I don't think cruelty wins. But what he did in this one is he brought a vial of urine from a friend of his who is pregnant, from a woman, and he poured her urine on the pregnancy test. So obviously, he got a positive pregnancy test, right? In order for a man, if a man pees on a pregnancy test and comes up positive, he almost certainly has a serious form of cancer. And he needs to see an endocrinologist immediately. Seriously. Guys in the room, if you ever pee on a pregnancy test and it says you're pregnant, you're not pregnant, you have cancer, and it's bad, go to a doctor immediately. Steven Crowder knew that. He wanted to see what the nurses at Planned Parenthood would do. So they saw his positive pregnancy tests. They know that's not normal, right? I mean, he's a biological male, he's a male. He should not get a positive pregnancy test. That means he's got major problems and he needs to see a doctor right away. They congratulated him on being pregnant. See, this is where it's not about, they say follow the science. They're not following, they let him leave without warning him to go see a doctor about cancer. Yeah.
Isn't that literally letting him die?
Yes.
Malpractice.
Yes, it's malpractice. It's literally letting him die. It's horrible. But see, what's more important is Dr. Money's theories than the science. So when you hear people say, oh no, gender's a construct, we've scientifically proven that. No, they have not. They're not following the science. They're not following the science. They're following their ideology. They let Steven Crowder walk out without warning him about cancer. It's sick. It's sick.
Those nurses should know about that human anatomy.
Yes, those nurses should have known about that.
And they do know.
Look, that's not the worst thing that Planned Parenthood does. They also have killed over 800 football fields worth of babies since 1973. So, you know, this is, yeah. No other scientific or medical specialty allows the patient to decide his or her diagnosis. We talked about this before. You can't just go to a doctor and say, I have cancer. I mean, maybe you do, but they're not just gonna take your word for it, they're gonna test you. But with transgenderism, they just take your word for it, they affirm you. It's sick, it's gross. You know, transgender ideology is actually a cult. It's interesting. You know, they hate religion, but really they're a religion. In fact, they're the bad kind of religion. Because if you look at what they do, they have the exact, like, characteristics that our cult has. A cult makes you have unquestioned belief in all of the points. They're mandatory. Even if there's no evidence for it, you have to believe it. You have to believe that if a 5-year-old says I'm transgender, then you're transgender. You have to believe that it's a good idea to put a drag queen on Blue's Clues like we saw last week. Yeah, Blue's Clues is for like 2-year-olds. And yet there was a drag queen on Blue's
One of my
Clues.
favorite shows when I was little too.
I grew up with Blue's Clues.
Well, good thing you didn't grow up in Blue's Clues recently. Because they had drag queen Dita Mays, and she did a song, or he did a song with Blue about A is for the asexual otters, and B is for the bisexual beavers, and C is for the, you know, the transgender walruses, and like, it's true. I'm not making, this is not the Babylon Bee. This is not a parody. You can search it on YouTube. Dita Mays Blue's Clues song. You'll find it.
I don't get why that should be on YouTube. That should be kind of banned for children.
Well, it should be banned for children, but we don't. We have freedom of speech and all that. It's up to the parents to say, no, my child's not going to watch this. If you're part of transgenderism, you have to cut off your family if they don't affirm you. Not only they don't just have to believe you, they have to be excited for you. Or you cut them off. That's what cults do. That's what the Jehovah's Witnesses do. That's what Scientology does. That's why those organizations are cults, and that's what transgenderism does. You have to get on the bandwagon 100%. No room for disagreeing on secondary issues. Look, I'm a born-again Christian, and I hope that all of you are too, but maybe you are, maybe you're not, I don't know. But you know what, we're allowed to disagree on secondary issues that aren't so important. Can women preach? I don't know, some people say yes, some people say no. Can they be pastors? Can, you know, the deacons mean this, or does it mean that? Do you get baptized by sprinkling? Do you get baptized by immersion? Look, there are things we can disagree about, and we're still Christians, and we don't hate each other, and we don't like say, you're out of my life and I'm cutting you off. But it doesn't work that way in the trans community. You have to believe it all of it. That's what cults are like. You must believe even when it's patently false. You have to believe that gender-affirming care stops suicide, even though the science shows it doesn't. But you have to believe it. And if you start questioning it, you're out. You're kicked out, and then you lose everything. You must not look into the sinister history of the founders. That's what the Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses have 100 years of false prophecies and them telling their people awful things. In 1925, they expected Christ to come back, and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were going to come back to the earth, and they even built them a house. And there are photographs of that house for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they told people, don't go to college, because why are you going to go to college? You're just going to, you know, the end of the world's coming. But you know, people, Jehovah's Witnesses today aren't allowed to learn about that. They're not allowed to know, because it's a cult. That's why. And that's what transgender is, the same thing. You know, no, don't look into the eunuch archives, don't look into John Money, don't look into any of that. And you must excommunicate anyone who changes their mind. Now, I want you to just, you know, this whole thing can be wrapped up in just a simple question. What is a woman? You know, one of the most recent Supreme Court justices was asked that. What is a woman? And her answer was, I'm not a biologist, I don't know. And she sits on the Supreme Court today. What is a woman? It's not a difficult question. You know what the answer is? An adult human female. That's what a woman is. But if you believe in trans ideology, well, what's a woman? Is a woman could have a penis, a woman could have a vagina, a woman could be this, a woman could be that, anything, whatever you think is a woman. It's like you can't, like, what is a woman? Oh, by the way, when you ask that, don't let them use the word woman in the definition. And again, we don't ask this to make people feel bad. We're asking it because we want to make a point that it was showing like how ridiculous it is. Now, I don't know if you know Matt Walsh. He's a commentator, and he made an actual documentary called "What Is a Woman," and you've got to watch it. You have got to watch it. I'm going to show you the trailer to it. He just goes around and he asks people on the street, "What is a woman?" They can't answer it. And then he asks experts, doctors who actually prescribe Luprin. You know, they actually prescribe these medications they're giving to kids. What is a woman? They can't say. Like the doctors who actually do the surgeries. Just define what is a woman. They can't answer it. You mean you're cutting off breasts from people and you don't even know what a woman is? He talks to congressmen. He goes to all different places, and he's just asking, "What is a woman?" It's not a hard question, but how people react, like they can't. If you're into the trans ideology, you can't answer it. It's an unanswerable question. Or they try to say, "Well, a woman is someone who thinks they're a woman." Okay, you can't use the word woman in the definition. What is a woman? Just what is it? And just even in the trailer, you can get the gist of what happens to Matt. And again, I show you this not to make fun. We're not against the trans people or even the people who believe this. We're against the ideology, the influencers, the people who are promoting this, because they're hurting people. Because a lot of the people who fall into the transgender cult are people who do have comorbidities. They're already struggling with mental disorders. They're already struggling with difficult things. And now they get this thrown on top of them. It's cruel. It's barbaric. The trans community is hurting its own people. Yeah.
Though I'm gonna make this dull, but you just said the answer to this question here onto YouTube.
Yeah.
People will probably answer this question with the answer that you just said.
So I'm sorry, I'm missing your point.
Like, it's like they're talking about transgenderism and all of that, and all of a sudden, then you just like, okay, what is a woman? They're probably going to say, oh, it's an adult female.
Well, people who have thought through it will say that. People who are rooted in biology will say that. But a lot of our culture, the TikTok generation and the Tumblr generation, will not say that. They'll say a woman is whatever you think it is. You know? I mean, I see some people here who appear to be women, but I don't know that. And I see some people here that appear to be male, but I don't know that. They might be women.
Okay.
You know, like, so you can't say. You see how ridiculous that is? Greg Koukl, who's a terrific apologist, someone who defends the faith, he calls that pulling the roof off an argument. When you take an argument and you show that logically it leads to absurdity, it shows that the belief is invalid. If you take it to its logical conclusion, we've done that all this semester. We've shown that certain things, if taken to its logical conclusion, like atheism, that the world is just made up of atoms reacting, arbitrarily. Well, if you take that to its conclusion, you get chaos, so it can't be true. Anyway, I want you to see this trailer, but if you have the means, please watch the whole documentary. It's well worth it.
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person could tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women. We ask you to leave.
What is that?
I'm a husband. I'm a father of 4. I host a talk show. I give speeches. I write books. I like to make sense of things.
A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
That's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No.
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Can a man become a woman?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is? You want to tell us what a woman is?
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I will never be a man.
And so they go on the internet and they're told that all of their problems will be solved if they become a man.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
And you're affirming it with hormones that have never been used in this way.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible.
Completely reversible.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders.
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview.
So you don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids, or?
How can they be removing the healthy breasts of 15-year-old girls?
There are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What are we going to do about that? Carve them up?
How can this whole thing be happening, Matt?
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much.
I care about the truth. I care about children. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them.
Is it transphobic to tell the truth?
The interview's over. Let's turn off the cameras.
Excuse me.
They're fair. I just wanted to know, what is a woman?
And you're not going to find out.
Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They say no, never.
I hope you enjoyed it a little bit.
We'll see when it comes out.
Now, Matt Walsh is not a born-again Christian, so he's not handling the subject with his delicacy that I would like, but his points are valid. What is a woman? Remember, let's not forget, you guys have been really patient. It's been a long class. People claiming to have gender dysphoria are in a lot of emotional pain. They really are. So we're not going to make fun of them. We're not going to tell them they're stupid. We're not going to tell them, like, oh, you're just following Dr. John Money and WPATH and the Eunuch Archives. No, we might share that information with them at a good time. We're going to be like ambassadors. We're going to use tact and love and kindness. They're in a lot of emotional pain. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. They're made in God's image, and they deserve love, compassion, kindness, and dignity, even if they're rude to us. You freaking horrible born-again Christians, I can't believe you think that you know more than WPATH. How dare you? We're still going to be nice to them. And we're going to do that to everybody. We're nice to atheists, we're nice to Scientologists, we're nice to Buddhists, we're nice to everybody. If you want more information, because we just, if you can believe it, how long have we been doing this? Almost 2 hours, wow. For more information, I really recommend What is a Woman? Terrific. You can go to changemovement.com. We looked at them, we saw some of them last week. They're actual people who were transgender, and now they're not. Search YouTube for detransitioners. You'll see more and more of them telling their story all the time. Be careful, there's a lot of weird stuff too. Transformed is a DVD that's still currently legal to buy, but who knows how long. I bought it. It's the amazing 15 ex-transgender individuals, and these people were like, they meant it. They got all the surgeries, all the hormones, all the everything, and then every one of them was amazingly and supernaturally saved by God. They all came to faith in Christ, and all of them went back to what their actual gender really is. And they transformed the right way. They got the inside changed, not the outside. And now they're living great lives. But some of them are tragically like, it's really sad when they tell their stories, they're like, but I don't get my penis back. I don't get my breast back. And doctors will say, oh, you can get your breast back. We can put implants in or whatever. It will never feel the same. It'll never work the same. You'll never be able to nurse a baby with that. You'll never be able to feel the pleasure sexually through it. I think that's a huge problem. Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shire is a must-read. I mean, that's just so good. And by good, I mean horrifying, but she does a really good job. And she's not a born-again Christian either. She's a liberal journalist. She just presents facts. And anything by Beckett Cook, you can't go wrong with him. He has a podcast, he has a YouTube channel, he writes books. He does a really good job. Guys, this is a very sensitive topic. You guys have done an amazing job. As always, you've shown a lot of maturity. You've shown a lot of you've given dignity to people who are struggling. And I'm proud of you for that. And you honored Christ for that. If anybody's watching this who's, doesn't believe what we believe, I am impressed that you made it this long, and I'm thankful. And you're very open-minded, and I appreciate it. And if you want to reach out to me, you know, I'm pretty easy to find online. So you can go to great-news.org and contact me there. Let's pray. Dear Lord, you are the maker of heaven and earth, and you made people. You made male and you made female, and you saw that it was good. But then we fell, we sinned, we went our own way, and we always do. We're all guilty, and everything's broken. Families are broken, society is broken, hospitals are broken, universities are broken, it's healthcare systems are broken, and even gender is broken. And it's not surprising that people are struggling with gender dysphoria. I'm sad that it used to be 1 in 10,000 people, and now it's so many people. It's just grown so much. But Lord, we trust you for that you will heal those people, that they will realize that their problem is on the inside, not on the outside, and that they'll get healing through Christ. I pray, God, that all of us will treat people in the gay community the way we would want to be treated, that we would love our neighbor as ourselves, and people in the gay community, they're our neighbor. So we'll be good to them, we'll help them. I hope that their eyes will be open, that the people that they're going to, WPATH, the APA, all those places, are actually hurting them. The trans community is their enemy, not us. The trans community that's telling them, oh, put on a wig, change your name, get on hormones, is actually hurting them. Please rescue people who are in captivity. And please use us to be a loving hand, a loving heart, a loving embrace, a loving help. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you guys. You guys did a great job. Hey everybody, this is Mark. Hope you liked that video. If you did, please click like and subscribe to the channel. Please visit our website at great-news.org. There you'll find tons of free resources. Everything is free to help you to become a better, more effective ambassador for Jesus Christ. You'll also find a compelling and exciting gospel presentation that you can share with friends, with loved ones. You can share it with strangers on social media. And there they'll be presented with life's biggest questions. Does God exist? Is there evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ? It's all there at the website. May God bless you as you share Jesus Christ with the lost. We love Jesus. How can we not share him with others? Have a great day.